So I just watched the new Jesse Kotton video talking about Malice and all the problems he has with the deck, and I don't know about anybody else, but I think a lot of the problems he perceived with the deck seemed weirdly uninformed and also just blatantly untrue. I wanted to make a video going over my thoughts on what everything Kotton had to say about the deck, and showcasing why I really don't agree with everything he said. The points that Jesse brought up that I really had a problem with are, one, that Malice is basically impossible to stop going second with hand traps. Malice makes Snake Eye Fiendsmith level end boards in terms of strength and their ability to have those boards not be broken going second. And that Malice end boards are specifically much harder to crack and much closer to auto-win FDK boards than Ryal boards. Because keep in mind, everything that he said about this deck is in relation to its relationship with Ryal, as both are really the only meta decks in the format. So first up, let's look at a standard one-card Malice combo, because that was another thing that Kotton had a problem with, that Malice is a one-card combo deck like Snake Eyes was in the past.
Hey, listen, you fucking redneck hillbilly. You ever goddamn call me again, and I will personally crawl through this cell phone and wring your scrawny fucking neck. Lose this goddamn number. If you don't, I swear to God, you will regret it for what's left of the rest of your fucking life.
So this end board is pretty good, right? It's not bad at all. You end on a negate, you end on a couple of banishes, you end on some graveyard interruption, and you end on insane follow-up if GWC resolves. So he's not wrong that this end board is really good. If you manage to get to this end board, or if you manage to get to the SP Cryptor end board instead of Terahertz, depending on what you like, you're probably in a pretty good spot to win the game. Well, now let's take a look at Ryal's one-card combo, specifically Ryal Fiendsmith, because that's the deck that Kotton loved to just talk up and glaze in his video while putting down Malice. I'm sure that this deck puts up the most fair end board off one-card combos of all time, right? Well, let's see. Okay, so let's look at this end board now. Off a single card from Ryal got 2 Solemn Warnings with High King Caesar, 3 Pops with Aggregator, a Monster Negate, and the Paradise setup with Requiem and Lacrima Engrave. Great, that seems a lot less powerful. That seems a lot more fair than ending on Terahertz plus GWC, or SP Cryptor plus GWC. This definitely seems like it's a whole dimension difference in terms of power, and just comparison to something like a Snake Eye Fiendsmith board. Both of these end boards are pretty good. If you make either of these end boards off a one-card combo playing either of these decks, you're pretty favored to win. Like, your opponent going second is most likely not going to be able to break your board. So saying that Malice is some type of offender in the format, like it's a Snake Eye Fiendsmith level threat, and that it's ruining the format for you is just, like, not a good stance to have. Like, I don't understand it. Next, we can talk about hand traps. Kotton said that Malice is extremely hard to hand trap, and that's what led to him feeling like it's another kind of Snake Eye situation where you need a third hand trap to stop his second card. I don't agree with this stance on Malice at all, and I think it's the wrong way to go about hand trapping Malice, and I just think it's a very surface level uninformed take on stopping the deck with hand traps going second. Because let's look. Obviously, the deck's gimmick that a lot of people know this deck for is that Imperm and Veiler and any kind of targeted negation, even Mourner, is very bad into this deck. Even though these cards actually aren't bad into this deck. If you Imperm Dormouse and that resolves, it's extremely good. The only problem is that you have to take a gamble if your opponent sets a card, because they could set either MTP or TB11 in a 40-card deck, and both of those could dodge your targeted negation hand traps. And it's also true that Ash Blossom is really bad into this deck. There's basically no good spot in this deck to Ash, except for saving your own Ash Blossom to hit the MTP on your own turn, which is just really not the best. But what I don't understand is there's many singular hand traps that you can play against Malice that by themselves will make a noticeable impact on the strength of the Malice end board, which is something that you could not say against Snake Eyes. In Snake Eye, there was not a single hand trap that you could play by itself that would make a noticeable impact on the deck's end board strength unless they bricked and only had one playable. Let's look. These three in specific are the best hand traps to play against Malice. Nib by itself will make a noticeable impact on the Malice end board if you nib at the optimal time, which is not that hard to figure out what the optimal time to nib in the Malice combo is. Even if they had a hypothetical extender, they couldn't really extend past it to make the full board. Dominus Impulse is basically the same amount of impact that nib is into the Malice end board. Most of the time, you're going to want to be nibbing the Red Ransom trying to resummon. That'll basically put them on the same amount of bodies and the same amount of extenders as it had if you nib them at the best spot. And Bell to hit the GWC is extremely good. The deck's whole plan game 2 is basically resolving GWC. If this card resolves going second, you most likely win the duel. Because you're just going to get a million bodies, and you're going to get a million banishes, you're going to get infinite follow-up. So this being able to just straight up negate that is really good. So these three hand traps are really good into the Malice end board. They're just singular hand traps that will make a noticeable impact. And these two specifically, Impulse and Bell, will be insanely good top decks, 6 cards into the Malice matchup going second, which is extremely rare for a hand trap to be able to do. Basically, no hand trap except for Imperm has ever been extremely good going second on turn 1, and also extremely good as a 6th card to top deck into your own turn. So making a video where you say that Malice is an extremely hard deck to stop with hand traps going second, and it's basically impossible, and you're probably just going to lose, and the Malice matchup is just basically a die roll, which is a lot of the things I heard in Jesse Kotton's video, is just flat out wrong to me. It's just, I can't believe it. It's just not correct. If you've played Malice, or you've played against a lot of Malice, and you know what to deck build for the deck, and you know how to play against the deck, it's just not true. Malice is more interactive than Fiendsmith Ryal, I feel. It's just flat out how it is. And of course, the biggest weakness of Malice, this card right here, there's no point to really side decking much for the Malice matchup because you're going to be side decking in Lancia, which is just a non-once per turn hand trap that will instantly win you the game if it drops. Which, of course, Ryal has nothing even close in comparison to a card like that. D-Barrier isn't even that good into Ryal anymore because it doesn't stop Fiendsmith at all. But Lancia, no matter what build of Malice you're playing, if you're playing Sky Striker, if you're playing Kashtira, if you're playing even Fiendsmith, even the Fiendsmith Malice is not as good into Lancia as Fiendsmith Ryal is into D-Barrier. All in all, I don't really understand where Jesse Kotton was coming from talking about in his video about just dogging on Malice so hard, saying that it's just making the format so much worse, and he just wishes the format was nothing but Fiendsmith Ryal mirrors. These decks aren't that dissimilar. Malice is a worse deck than Fiendsmith Ryal, bar none. It's a good deck, but it's way easier to hand trap than Jesse Kotton gives it credit for. Its end boards are basically the exact same as Fiendsmith Ryal in terms of power and ability to break and follow up, and its extender game is worse than Ryal's, like by a lot. So it's even easier to stop going second, hypothetically, than Ryal. So I don't understand why he would make these takes.